I found out my father had more money than God the same day I realized my family had been waiting for him to die. Before I start, if you like real stories that don't feel scripted, take a second to subscribe and hit like. No pressure, let's get into it. My name is Ethan Caldwell. I'm 34, and I live in Austin, Texas. I'm not rich, never was. I work a normal job, pay rent, complain about gas prices like everyone else. My life, until recently, was painfully average. My dad died on a Tuesday morning. Sudden heart attack, no hospital drama, no goodbye. By Wednesday afternoon, my phone stopped ringing. By Thursday, my family was already arguing about paperwork. That should have been my first red flag. We were sitting in my aunt's house, going through my dad's things. Quiet room, fake sympathy. Coffee going cold on the table. Everyone looked calm. Too calm. I went into his old study to grab some documents. The room still smelled like his cologne. Same desk, same drawer he always kept locked. This time, it wasn't locked. Inside the drawer, taped underneath, was a plain envelope. No name, no stamp, just hidden. Inside was a black bank card, no logo on the front, no bank name, just my name embossed on it. That didn't make sense. My dad never put my name on anything. There was also a folded note. One sentence, written in his handwriting. Do not tell them you have this. That's when my stomach dropped. Later that night, alone in my apartment, I called the number on the back of the card. I expected a rejection, a deadline, maybe a scam. Instead, the woman on the phone went quiet. She asked me to confirm my identity. Then she said, very calmly, "Sir, are you in a safe place right now?" That's not something banks usually ask. Then she told me the balance. I thought I misheard her. I asked her to repeat it. She did, slower this time. There was over $1 billion connected to that account. I didn't scream, I didn't celebrate. I just sat there, staring at the wall, realizing something was deeply wrong. My father was a mid-level contractor, no big business, no headlines, no lifestyle that matched that number, which meant one thing. This money wasn't an accident, and it definitely wasn't meant to be shared. The next morning, I mentioned the card, casually, at breakfast with my family. My brother dropped his fork. My uncle suddenly needed to take a call, and my mom looked at me and said, "You weren't supposed to find that." That's when I understood. My father didn't hide that card from the world. He hid it from them. And whatever this money was tied to, I had just stepped into something none of us were ready for. The first call came less than 12 hours after I mentioned the card. Not from a bank, not from the police, from my brother. He didn't ask how I was doing. He didn't say sorry about Dad. He just said, "We need to talk, today." We met at a coffee shop we'd gone to 100 times growing up. Same place, same chairs, different energy. He kept his voice low, calm, almost polite. And then he said something that didn't sound like a suggestion. "You're holding on to something that doesn't legally belong to you." I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was absurd. He slid a folder across the table. Inside were copies of documents I'd never seen before. Trust structures, amendments, signatures dated years back. My father's signature, or something that looked close enough. He told me the card was part of a financial vehicle my father set up for the family, that I was never meant to have direct access, that there were procedures, trustees, conditions, and lawyers. "So, why is my name on the card?" I asked. He didn't answer that. Instead, he warned me, calmly, that if I tried to move the money, freeze accounts, or ask questions, things would get complicated. Legal complications. Federal ones. That word stuck with me. Federal. By the time I got home, I had 3 missed calls from unknown numbers and 1 voicemail from a law firm in New York. Not asking, informing. They wanted to clarify my position regarding an estate asset I was temporarily in possession of. Temporarily. The next few days blurred together. Emails, certified letters, language designed to sound professional while quietly threatening my life as I knew it. They didn't accuse me of stealing. They implied I could. What hurt wasn't the pressure. It was who was applying it. My uncle stopped returning texts. My mom called once, crying, telling me I was tearing the family apart. No one asked if I was okay. No one asked what Dad wanted. Then I found out why. A week later, I requested a full account summary directly from the bank. Something basic, something legal. What came back wasn't just numbers, it was history. Transactions going back decades, shell companies, transfers routed through trusts I didn't recognize, payments to people I'd never heard of, and one recurring name, my brother's. Not as a beneficiary, as a controller. That's when it clicked. This wasn't about inheritance, this was about exposure. My father hadn't trusted my family with the card because they were already too close to the money, too involved, too dependent on whatever system he had built. And now that he was gone, I was the loose end. Late one night, while going through the documents again, I noticed something odd tucked into the back of the folder my brother had given me. A letter, old, not addressed to anyone, just marked with a date. I recognized my father's handwriting immediately. The first line made my hands shake. If you're reading this, it means they've already turned on you. I didn't finish it that night, because at that moment my phone buzzed with a new email. Subject line: Notice of intent to freeze assets. And suddenly, I understood. This wasn't a family dispute anymore. It was a countdown. I stopped arguing the moment I realized they wanted me emotional. That was the first real move I made. I went quiet, no more defending myself, no more explaining. I replied slower, shorter, sometimes not at all. To my family, it probably looked like I was backing down. I wasn't. I told my brother I needed time. Told the lawyers I was reviewing everything. Told my mom I didn't want to fight. And then I started paying attention. Silence is a strange thing. When you stop reacting, people reveal themselves. Patterns show up. Timing matters. Who calls when, who panics when you don't answer. I noticed that every time I delayed, someone else escalated. A new email, a new deadline, a new warning wrapped in polite language. That told me something important. They weren't in control. They were afraid of losing it. I hired my own attorney, quietly, not someone connected to the family, not someone local. Someone who asked better questions than they gave answers. The first thing he asked me wasn't about the money. He asked, "Do you understand why your father isolated this asset?" I didn't, not fully, so we dug. What we found wasn't criminal, not directly. It was insulated. My father had built layers, trusts inside holding companies, jurisdictions chosen not for secrecy, but for distance. Everything designed to slow people down, including my family. The card wasn't a key to the money. It was a trigger. If I held it, certain protections stayed active. If I gave it up, control shifted, not legally, automatically. That's when I understood why the pressure felt rushed. They weren't trying to win. They were trying to beat a clock. I started cross-checking dates, transfers, amendments. And that's when I saw it. A clause buried deep in the structure. Something no one had mentioned, something no one wanted me to notice. If I was declared unfit, incapacitated, or unavailable, temporary authority transferred to the next listed controller. my brother. I read that sentence 3 times before it sank in. This wasn't about convincing me. It was about replacing me. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was scared, because everything suddenly made sense. The sudden concern, the urgency, the lawyers talking like I was already a problem. I wasn't family to them anymore, I was an obstacle. So I disappeared, just a little. I stopped going home, changed routines, took meetings from different locations. Nothing dramatic, just less predictable. I also did something else. I moved a very small amount of money. Not enough to trigger alarms, not enough to prove anything. Just enough to confirm I could. The system didn't fight me, it responded. That was the moment I knew my father had planned for this. But he'd planned for more than money. Buried in the same folder as the clause, I found a reference to a secondary file. Physical, stored off-site, accessible only if certain conditions were met. Conditions that hadn't been met yet. The file wasn't about finances, it was about leverage. My attorney looked at me and said something I'll never forget. You need to decide whether you want to win quietly or survive loudly. Because once I opened that file, things would change. Permanently. And if I waited too long, someone else might decide for me. That night, as I sat alone in my car, phone off, lights out, I realized the truth. This wasn't my inheritance, it was my father's last test. And if I failed it, I wouldn't just lose the money. I might disappear from the story entirely. I didn't make a big announcement. I didn't call anyone and say, I know what you're doing. I just stopped pretending this was about grief. Because once you read a clause that basically says, if you're unavailable, your brother takes control, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to being the guy who shows up, stays quiet, and leaves early. You start noticing exits, cameras, who's parked across the street, who suddenly cares where you are. The funny part is, nobody ever threatened me directly. They didn't have to. The pressure was designed to feel professional. Emails with legal headers, voicemails from partners I'd never heard of, letters that showed up by courier like I was some kind of executive, not a guy who still forgot to take the trash out on Tuesdays, and every message had the same vibe. We can do this the easy way, Ethan, or we can make it ugly. My attorney, Miles, told me to breathe and slow down. He's one of those calm people who never raises his voice, which somehow makes him scarier than anyone yelling. He said, they're trying to force you into a mistake. Because a mistake becomes a story. And once you're the guy who mishandled assets or acted irrationally, then the word unfit starts sounding reasonable. In court, on paper, in a trust clause, that's when I made the second move. I didn't move more money, I didn't confront my brother. I started building a timeline. I printed everything, emails, documents, the weird trust amendments my brother had handed me, bank correspondence, even screenshots of missed calls. I made copies and put them in 3 different places. Not because I thought I was in some movie, because real life is worse. In real life, people don't have to hurt you physically. They just have to make you look unstable, and the system does the rest. The hardest part was my mom. She kept calling like nothing had changed, like we were still the kind of family that argued about politics and then ate pie. Ethan, please, she'd say, just give it back. Your father wouldn't want this. But she didn't know what my father wanted. Not really. Or maybe she did, and that's what scared her. I asked her once, quietly, Mom, did you know about the card? Silence on the line. Then a sharp inhale, then I don't want to talk about it. And that was the most honest thing she'd said in weeks. The next day, I got served. Not with a lawsuit exactly, something softer, more strategic. a petition for temporary oversight due to concerns regarding the handling of estate-related financial instruments. In plain English, they were asking a court to put someone else in control of me. I stared at the papers for a long time, not angry, not panicking, just embarrassed. Because it's humiliating to realize your own family is willing to label you unstable to get what they want. They weren't calling me a thief, they were calling me a risk. And risks get managed. That night, I finally read the rest of my father's letter. The one that started with, "If you're reading this, it means they've already turned on you." He wrote like he knew exactly how this would play out. Not dramatic, just precise. He said he'd built the structure the way he did because he'd watched what money did to people, how it made them impatient, how it made them justify things they never would have justified before. He wrote that he loved my brother, but he didn't trust him. He wrote that he loved my mother, but she would choose peace over truth every time. He wrote that he wasn't leaving me money. He was leaving me a decision. And then he gave me two options. Option 1, sign control back to the family, walk away clean, keep my life simple. No war, no court, no risk. Option 2, activate the failsafe, lock the structure in a way that would freeze everyone out, including me for a period of time, until a set of requirements were met. Requirements that would expose the entire system if anyone tried to force their way in. In other words, if I chose option 2, I would be lighting a fuse. I sat on my couch with that letter and just felt tired. Because people always say they want the truth until the truth comes with consequences. I could taste revenge. It was right there. My brother had crossed lines. My uncle had disappeared. My mom had chosen denial. If I wanted to burn everything down, I probably could. But I kept thinking about what my attorney said. Win quietly or survive loudly. And I didn't just mean survive physically. Survive as myself. Because money does something subtle. It starts rewriting who you think you are. It whispers that you're entitled to punish people, that you deserve to teach them a lesson. And that's how you become the same kind of person you hate. So I did something that felt almost stupid. I met my brother again, not in public this time. He insisted on a private office downtown, glass walls, expensive chairs, a place designed to make you feel small. He showed up with a lawyer at his side, like I was a stranger. He smiled like we were negotiating a car deal. "Ethan," he said, "this doesn't have to get messy." I looked at him and realized he wasn't sad about Dad. He was irritated. Like Dad had left a mess he didn't get to clean up. I said, "You tried to declare me unfit." His smile didn't move. "We're just protecting the family." And in that moment I understood something clean and cold. To him, family meant the people who agree with him, not me. I asked him one question. "Did Dad ever tell you why my name is on the card?" His lawyer shifted in his seat. Just slightly. My brother's eyes flickered. It was quick, a microsecond of annoyance, and then he said, "Because you're easier to manipulate." That's what he meant to say. You could hear it in his tone. But what came out was something more careful. "Because your father made mistakes near the end," he said. "You're confused, and you're holding something you don't understand." Then he leaned forward, voice low. "Sign it over, or we'll make sure you don't get the chance." Again, not a threat, not directly, just a promise. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse him of anything. I just nodded like I was listening. Because that was the whole point of the meeting. I needed to see how far he'd go when he thought he was winning. When I left, I didn't drive home. I went straight to Miles' office and handed him the letter. Then I handed him something else. A USB drive with every file I'd collected, every pattern, Every document inconsistency my attorney's team had flagged. The timeline, the call logs, the petition, everything. Miles looked at me and said, "You're thinking about triggering the failsafe." I said, "I'm thinking about not waking up one day and finding out I've been declared unavailable." He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "If you do this, they'll know you're not scared anymore." I stared at the city through his window, the traffic, the normal people, the normal lives, and it hit me all at once like a wave. This money wasn't a gift, it was a trap with an exit door, and my father had handed me the handle. So I made my choice. Not with anger, not with revenge, with clarity. We drafted the activation documents, we filed them in a way that couldn't be reversed without leaving a trail. We notified the bank using their highest-level secure channel. We did everything by the book, because the book was the only thing that could protect me. And then Miles paused and said, "One more thing." He slid a printed page across the desk, a simple confirmation from the bank's internal team. Once I activated the failsafe, the system would send an automatic notice to all listed interested parties. My brother, my mother, my uncle, everyone. They would get an alert, a formal message. Meaning, the moment I pulled the trigger, the mask would come off. I held the pen above the final signature line and felt my heart do something strange. Not fear, grief. Because signing meant accepting what I'd been trying not to accept. That my family was willing to destroy me for access, that my father knew it, and that he'd chosen me to stand in the middle of it anyway. I signed. The next morning, I woke up to 19 missed calls. 2 from my mother, 7 from my brother, the rest from unknown numbers, and 1 voicemail that made my blood run cold. It was my brother, no longer pretending to be calm. "Ethan," he said, breathing hard, like he'd been running. "What the hell did you do?" Then, quieter, like he'd realized someone was listening. "You just made yourself a problem." And right after that voicemail ended, another notification popped up. A new email, no subject line, just an attachment. File name, Offsite Package Release. Authorized. My father's secondary file, the leverage, and the only question left was whether opening it would protect me, or start something I couldn't stop. I opened the file before I could talk myself out of it. That was the difference between me at the beginning of this story and me at the end. Before, I hesitated. I waited. I hoped things would calm down. Now, I understood something simple. If you hesitate long enough, someone else decides for you. The file wasn't dramatic, no videos, no confessions, just documents, clean, organized, boring even, if you didn't understand what you were looking at. My father had documented everything. Every trust layer, every side agreement. Every time control had quietly shifted without signatures. Emails where my brother acknowledged decisions he later denied. Memos from advisors warning about conflicts of interest. Even recorded calls, legal in the jurisdictions they were made, where people spoke freely because they assumed my father would never turn on them. He hadn't been hiding money. He'd been containing people. And he'd built the system so that the moment anyone tried to force control, the containment failed. Publicly. Within hours of me opening the file, Miles was on the phone with 3 different firms, not threatening, informing. That changed everything. The tone shifted immediately. No more deadlines, no more temporary oversight. Now it was about cooperation, damage control, quiet resolutions. Too late, because my brother didn't handle pressure well. He showed up at my apartment unannounced that night. Not with a lawyer, not with a plan, just anger. I didn't open the door. I watched him through the peephole, pacing, talking to himself, checking his phone like someone waiting for backup that wasn't coming. He left after 20 minutes. The next morning, the real action started. Banks froze secondary access points. Trustees resigned. 2 advisors stepped away pending review. All automatic. All triggered by safeguards my father had buried years ago. By noon, my phone rang. It was my brother. No smile this time, no performance. "What do you want?" he asked. Not "let's talk," not "we're family," just terms. I told him the truth. "I want out." He laughed, sharp and humorless. "You already are." And that's when I played the last card my father left me. I told him I wasn't keeping the money. Silence. I explained that the structure allowed me to redirect the funds into an independent foundation under conditions that removed all of us, including me, from control. No family access, no trustees with history, no leverage. He finally sounded scared. "You can't do that." I already did. The truth was, I'd done it the night before. Not all of it. Enough. Enough to break the addiction. Because that was the real thing my father understood. Money doesn't just buy things. It creates dependency. And dependency makes people dangerous. Within a week, the lawsuit stopped. Quietly withdrawn. My uncle sent a single email wishing me peace. My mother didn't call anymore. And my brother? He lost everything that mattered to him, not the money, but the control, the influence, the ability to pull strings without consequences. We don't speak now, not because I hate him, because there's nothing left to say. The rest of the money is locked away, doing exactly what my father intended, funding projects that don't have our last name on them. No plaques, no credit, just distance. As for me, I moved. Different city, smaller place, fewer explanations. People always ask if it was worth it. Losing my family. Walking away from a number most people can't even imagine. Here's the part no one expects. The moment I stopped being watched, I slept better than I ever had in my life. Because the real inheritance wasn't the money. It was the freedom to walk away from people who would have destroyed me, and not become one of them in the process. That black card, I canceled it, cut it in half myself. And the funny thing is, the second I did, I finally felt rich.